Let me introduce myself first. My name is Ingrid and my artist name is Isan Roche. I'm being mentioned as Lady Gaga's inspiration in books like Queerness in Pop Music by Stan Hawkins, who has written on many famous artists. I built my Isan Roche brand starting in 2007 and then founded my own company in New York called Isan Roche LLC. I then secured 100,000 euros investment and applied for my E2 visa. But strangely, I was denied because I spoke out on the plagiarism by the music industry and how they founded Lady Gaga and later Lana Del Rey and other artists based on my brand. Some people claim I was rejected by the music industry. And that's not true. I never aimed to be signed. I didn't want to give them my money and become their slave because many artists get signed to very bad deals that leave them with nothing, just like Michael Jackson in the past. And they sometimes even take 85% of your earnings and you are tied to very bad contracts. And because I knew what I was doing, I rejected them. I hired PR companies, built my own brand, hired my own people, got on the radio in London, produced music with big producers and had a concept how to turn myself into a celebrity. But they didn't like that. And that was my goal, to show how it could be done without being controlled or sexualized by elitist systems. Now let's move to Neon Films. They present themselves as an independent film company. In reality, it is a carefully packaged brand, a so-called indie, that suddenly appeared on the scene. Before 2017, Neon was barely on the map. Yet, with the releases Ingrid Goes West and I, Tonya, they were propelled into Hollywood visibility almost overnight. This was not an organic rise, it was manufactured, backed and designed by elite systems. 1 year before their sudden rise, I met the founder, Tom Quinn, in Monaco. A woman introducing us said, "Tom is looking for inspiration for his movies." That phrase has stayed with me ever since. It wasn't even our first meeting. Years earlier, I had crossed paths with him in Zurich because my parents live near Zurich, and he gave me his number. At that time, I had a lot of respect for him, and I simply didn't call because I felt I wanted to have my own success. I didn't want to be sexualized or put into a system by someone who was in the film industry and might only see me as a certain version. I have a diploma in acting and I am aware how narrow-minded film people can be, unfortunately. Later, through a background check, I learned that Tom Quinn's father had worked for the NSA. This is not a small detail. It reveals that his roots are tied to government intelligence, which raises serious questions about the true nature of his indie narrative. I also witnessed Quinn socializing among elites in Monte Carlo, where he was clearly familiar and at ease. These weren't the circles of struggling outsider filmmakers. They were the circles of someone already embedded in powerful networks. He also worked for Harvey Weinstein, I don't remember what year. But you have to think how Harvey Weinstein treated Rose McGowan and what kind of agencies he used to suppress her when she was speaking out against his abuse. 4 years later, in 2021, the name Ingrid Goes West was first mentioned to me. I had never heard of it before, but as I began to look closer, I realized it was more than just coincidence. This movie, with my name, portrayed a strange woman who was stalking celebrities and being obsessed with social media. While in 2012 and 2013, I was basically just running my own company, being in the media and building my brand. So you have to be on social media for that. I had to watch it and then I saw similarities like this one, similar pictures which I used for PR, which were featured in the movie, and even music that sounded like my own songs, but in a derogatory and mocking way. A trusted source with insight into occult societies later told me something that truly shook me. That films like these can function as so-called rituals. I don't know if this is true, but I'm just telling you what I've been told and been looking into for the past few years. So their purpose, according to him, is to manipulate people's timelines and destinies and sacrifice them for fame and fortune. In this view, the protagonist, if based on a real person, becomes a symbolic sacrifice for the benefit of others tied to a company or goal. I don't know if this is true, but I can say that the explanation fits disturbingly well with what I have experienced, because I became extremely ill in 2018 after that movie was released, and I didn't even watch it. Additionally, certain things from that movie happened in my life which never occurred to me before, like being expelled from an event in Singapore. Just as Ingrid, is being told that she is infiltrating a party. I never did that, but I remember that I was treated very poorly at an event in Singapore. And when watching that movie, it was almost like a deja vu. These things never happened to me before. I was always getting into VIP areas and very welcome at high-profile parties. The trusted source who first warned me also told me that these movie makers and circles use gematria and other symbols throughout their movies to create a system that is called predictive programming, and a so-called ritual to influence individuals and timelines. So gematria is a system of coded numbers and used in Kabbalistic traditions. They say it is possible to influence people's energy, the so-called chi and prana, by encoding these numbers and symbols in songs, movies, or art. Therefore, art is very powerful and feared by them, so they want to control it. If this is true, it means art can shift and shape our future. According to him, gematria is one of the higher tools in elitist occult circles, where words and names carry hidden meanings and energetic weights. He told me that in gematria, the title Ingrid Goes West corresponds to New World Order. He calculated that, and you can actually look it up under gematrix.org. So the protagonist's name, Ingrid Thorburn, carries its own disturbing resonance. Thorburn can be read as whoreburn, but also contains the symbol of Thor, a god of war, suggesting sacrifice and conflict. In English gematria, Ingrid Thorburn corresponds to phrases like the mark of the beast, Prince of Darkness, the crucified woman, and COVID passport, or cursed by the beast, the scarlet woman, and even Freemason ritual. Again, I don't make these claims myself. I share what was told to me, and you can actually look it up with the Gematrix calculator. So when I heard these correspondences, I was shaken, because whether or not one believes in the power of gematria, the sheer weight of these accusations is difficult to ignore. Additionally, what I also found out, my name Ingrid can be also read as Ingrid, as in the grid. So it's literally like the grid comes to the west from the east, from China. So they wanted to bring the Chinese grid to the West and the Chinese system. So that was the ritual. Could that be? West also is the West Gate in Freemasonry and symbolic for death, because the sun goes down in the West. So Ingrid's death is literally the rise of the grid from the east to the west. Could that be? I don't know. It's just all a big coincidence, isn't it? Another gematria number of Ingrid Thorburn is assisted suicide. And Ingrid in the movie tries to commit suicide, which fails, and then she becomes famous, which is kind of distasteful, but maybe this movie, was trying to energetically encourage a person to commit suicide or something like that. Then we can also see Ingrid drinking Corona beer. In that movie, isn't that fun? And you know what? I actually started to drink Corona beer in 2020, I think. And I still like it, I have to admit, when I didn't even watch that movie. And I drank that beer a lot. And I stopped. But isn't it funny? I was personally just doing my own thing and I didn't want to be bothered. I wanted to have my own career. That was all what I was doing. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to step on anyone's foot. So I actually believed that was the best way for me to do my own thing. And I didn't even think I would matter that much to these circles. So they portray Ingrid as a stalker when in fact I founded my own brand. I was plagiarized, but they turn it around to the opposite and portray her as a psychopath. In 2017, the same year when Ingrid Goes West came out, Neon also released I, Tonya. In this case, the story revolved around a public figure, Tonya Harding. The film partly mocked her, partly promoted her, but at least Harding had the chance to exist in public and tell her own story and to reclaim her narrative. I did not have that. My name, my experiences were hidden in plain sight within Ingrid Goes West, but I was never given the chance to speak. And the strangest part was that after these two movies, Neon's reputation skyrocketed. The company received new opportunities, new prestige, their rise had begun. But in 2018, not long after the release of Ingrid Goes West, I became severely ill and bedridden. At that time, I had no knowledge the film even existed. The pattern doesn't even end with Ingrid Goes West or I, Tonya. Neon's very first movie, The Neon Demon, centers on a young model who is killed and cannibalized by other models who then rise to fame. Once again, we see the recurring theme. Once individuals' destruction become the fuel for another's ascent. Was this coincidence or part of the same ritualistic pattern? I don't know. How many times must the story repeat before it can no longer be dismissed as chance? So I was told this connects to certain Kabbalistic teachings where energy or chi can be transferred from one person to a company or project or another individual. The method? Through humiliation, mockery, or symbolic sacrifice. According to that trusted source, this is how fame and fortune are sometimes engineered. There is also the concept of predictive programming, where media plants ideas, images, and narratives into the public consciousness so that when events occur later, people accept them as natural or inevitable. Movies become not just entertainment, but a way to shape the future and reality. This is a Kabbalistic concept. I cannot say if this is 1000% true. I'm only telling you my own experience and it's actually scary. So I can prove to 100% that Neon has really used my life in rituals or films. But I can tell you this, the parallels are undeniable. The symbolism is heavy and the timing is suspicious. Whether or not you believe in occult practices, predictive programming, or gematria, what remains clear is that something strange is happening and it deserves to be exposed or at least looked at. And you know what? I would have let this go. In fact, I once respected Tom Quinn, the Neon founder. And just like you, I believe this was a character who would never do something like that to a woman. I even believe that maybe I was to blame for being rude or having misbehaved in some way. But you know, the pattern hasn't stopped. In the last year, just as I regained my health, serenity, and began attracting new opportunities, several new Neon films appeared. Again, with striking similarities to my artistic profile and personal life. The details make me believe this isn't coincidence anymore. It feels like surveillance. And that's just what I have to say. And I will make a new video mentioning these other movies and the similarities, which, you know, I cannot prove 100%. I'm just telling you my experience. It would make sense because if they sacrifice someone and siphon their prana, their life energy, they obviously don't want that person to rise or their company would go down. That is how I see it. But I want to quickly show you my gematria here. Ingrid Laurencio is female Jesus Christ. unfortunately also Illuminati sacrifice. So you can decode certain hidden meanings through gematria. My artist name is Second Coming of Christ. That's a big coincidence. And these Kabbalists don't seem to like Christ and believe in that energy. Now, I'm not saying I'm Christ, by no means. I am probably a bit of the opposite sometimes. But to them, it carries a certain energetic imprint and a meaning. And it could be why they chose me for that. Finally, I want you to look at Neon's gematria. They even rebranded themselves as Neonrated, which in gematria translates to MK Ultra. So surprising. And if you look at Lady Gaga, for example, she also translates to MK Ultra. Additionally, Lady Gaga was featured on Neon's profile in 2017, shortly before they made Ingrid Goes West. Coincidence, right? Maybe they stick together and they know each other and they didn't like that I spoke out against plagiarism, but there seems to be a connection. Their film's topics themselves reveal patterns. Parasite, mocking the poor. The Lodge, focusing on outsiders and mental illness and mocking them. And Spencer even ridiculing Princess Diana by depicting her as unstable, eating her pearl necklace in her soup. Wow, that's really artistic and unique. Anyway, in gematria, neon means evil. Neon films translates to military, and Neonrated, oh wow, how surprising, MK Ultra, Satanism, King Satan, Marduk, the king of Babylon. This paints a clear picture. What looks like independent cinema might actually be an arm of predictive programming and occult ritual operating under the guise of art, independent art. You know, do your thing, but don't try to sacrifice my soul. I'm just joking, of course, right? Anyway, because some people call what they do soul sacrifice, and I think if there's something to that, it should be revealed and people should speak about that. And people need to be careful with these kinds of people. But of course, I will be called a conspiracy theorist or mentally unstable. Yeah, or something like that. But that's fine. I already had that through Ingrid Goes West. And actually, after that movie came out, I experienced things like that, being called labels that this Ingrid character experienced in the movie. And as I said, I didn't even watch it. So it's something to look into, and I'm telling you my story. So think of it what you want. Food for thought for some more open-minded characters. The others, actually, you don't need to listen to it if you don't want to. I forgot to point out that David Lynch made a movie which, from that perspective, could finally make sense. Mulholland Drive. And I created a small analysis on my YouTube channel. The infamous Club Silencio seems to be a Freemasonic lodge due to the code of silence that they use, the finger to the mouth. And Betty was sacrificed there because she had a sparkling personality and her energy was being given to Camilla, the blonde girl, who is being featured on that casting. The dark-haired Camilla is actually a new persona which has developed, probably connected to some spirit that they use. I don't really know about that. And she gets all her success and all her prana, the chi, the life force. So Betty has nothing to hold on to. It's like an aura exchange, also biofield. I've looked deeper into it. And people talk about that now. So, because if you lose your aura or your biofield, you also lose your spiritual protection, which means all sorts of things can happen to you and you lose your meaning in life and can become very ill. From that perspective, the movie Mulholland Drive would finally make sense and have a very different meaning. And you know what? After I actually spoke out on that movie and made this review and described what I saw, Just a few months later, David Lynch died. It's, it's another big coincidence. I'm not saying anything here, but it was very strange and I felt very odd about it. That was my statement. I hope it helped some people and gave you some insight. I wish you a wonderful day and maybe I speak to you later.